You know how some parents say they don't have a favorite among their kids, but then that one sibling somehow gets all the best stuff? Well, that's Baizhi. Kuro Games power creep the heck out of other 5-star female characters by giving Baizhi a 4-star this VIP catwalk. While other 4-stars and even 5-star characters are barely trying to keep up. However, with great power comes great responsibility because Baizhi's buffing capabilities demand you to put in a little bit of extra work to use them effectively, which is where I come in. As I always say in my character breakdown videos, this will not be a generic guide where I read character descriptions because you can do that yourself. What this video rather does is to give you a detailed review and updated tips and tricks that I discovered after spending an unhealthy amount of time playing Baizhi that can help you clear content much faster and have a good time while doing it, because that's what actually matters in the game. If you're new to the game or free to play and you don't have resources to get characters like Shorekeeper, this will be a good opportunity to make use of Baizhi because you can get her for free early on in the game by pulling at least once on the standard convene banner. If you're also looking for a third healer to clear the traumatic zone, then this video will help you do just that. In today's character breakdown, I'm going to be covering how her buffing actually works, how to generate Concerto energy much faster, best possible build for smoother rotations, and lastly, optimized rotations for high damage. As always, if you find my videos helpful, enjoyable, or informative in any way, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to help support the channel. Baizhi's buffing capabilities are much similar to Verena, but you have to put in a little bit of effort to be able to enjoy all the buffs. For example, Verena's outro skill provides 15% damage amplification to all team members, but Baizhi provides the same 15% damage amplification to the character that gets healed after activating her outro skill, which lasts for 6 seconds. Or at least that's what the game wants you to think. The way the buff description is stated makes it look like Baizhi can only buff that one character that activates her outro skill, but it turns out that that's not actually the case. Whenever you intro to any character from Baizhi, you can see a white lotus around that particular character. The lotus will heal your character every 3 seconds for a 30 seconds duration, which activates the 15% damage amplification that lasts for 6 seconds. As you can see here, my Motefi was dealing 56 damage after the intro, but when the healing kicked in, his damage increased to 64, and this buff will last for 6 seconds until the lotus healing kicks in again. So that means that as long as the lotus heal your on-field character every 3 seconds, you can keep the buff for 27 seconds because it will take 3 seconds for the lotus to start healing your character. But this is where things get really interesting. What the game does not tell you is that the lotus actually stays on the on-field character, but not just the character that activates Baizhi's outro skill, which basically means that Baizhi can buff the whole team as long as the lotus heals them at least once, lasting for 6 seconds until they are healed again by the lotus. I'll show you exactly how to maintain this buff for the longest possible time on your main DPS and sub DPS at the rotation section of this video. Baizhi's other buffing capabilities lies in her inherent skill that drops an orb on the ground after casting her resonance skill, which buffs the attack of any character that picks it up by 15% for 20 seconds, which is fair because Baizhi is a 4-star character after all, so Kuro can't have her buffing all team members' attack automatically like Verena and still keep that 5-star catwalk plus a Pokemon. The orb drops at random locations per my testing, so it can be difficult to keep track of it. I mostly ignore it and focus on my rotations, but my DPS characters sometimes pick it up by accident. However, there is still a way to make up for the attack buff loss, which I'll discuss in the build section. For her second inherent skill, don't bother unlocking it unless you want to play a DPS Baizhi. Baizhi's Concerto energy regeneration is also quite decent. Using her skill while you have full Forte stacks will give you 32 Concerto energy, but if you use her skill without any Forte stacks, the Concerto energy generation is quite terrible. The total amount of Concerto energy you can regenerate with Baizhi by using her intro skill, resonance skill, liberation, and forte sums up to 62, and you need 100 to be able to activate her outro skill. But here's how you can quickly regenerate the rest by spending less time with Baizhi on the field. She can hold 4 forte stacks, and you can regenerate 1 stack per every basic attack hit with her Pokemon. And all the basic attack hits, whether it's her first one or fourth one, generates the same amount of Concerto energy. The first and second attack comes out really fast, but the third and fourth ones are a bit slow. I tried dash cancelling out of the second attack, but it does not generate any stacks if you dash while the second basic attack animation begins. Her basic attacks are also very good at parrying attacks for a rectifier user. You normally have to switch to a sword, broad blade, or gauntlet user to be able to parry incoming attacks during your rotations, but for Baizhi, you just have to parry without any issues, only if you understand the parry timings, which you can learn from my advanced combat guide, so be sure to check it out after this video. Luckily, all her basic attacks animations are long enough for you to swap out of, and she'll still hit the enemy to gain a forte stack. This presents a unique opportunity to always skip her third basic attack because of the long animation, and then swap to your sub DPS to regenerate Concerto energy by using your skill or basic attack sequence, and then swap back to Baizhi. Whenever you swap back to Baizhi without having a full Concerto energy from the character that you previously swapped from, you can see that Baizhi cast a special animation by launching her Pokemon to hit the enemy. This is very good because it allows you to regenerate about 5 Concerto energy, and the animation itself has invulnerability frames, which came as a surprise to me because Baizhi is the only character that is practically invincible while performing a normal swap attack. I'll be showcasing her Concerto energy regeneration by using the Rectifier of the Voyager and R2 variation, which gives 10 Concerto energy. Here's a basic representation of her special rotations to fill your Concerto energy way faster and rotate your team quickly as possible within 20 seconds at most in the first rotation. You first use Baizhi's Liberation, swap to sub DPS and complete their basic attacks and use their skill. Swap back to Baizhi, do 2 basic attacks, swap back to sub DPS and complete basic attacks, swap back to Baizhi again, do 2 basic attacks, and then use her skill to fully fill her Concerto energy. This can change slightly depending on the teams that you're running, but I'll show you how to properly rotate your team at the rotation section using a Jinshui team, since she can give you free intro skill, and Zhang Yao, since he has an Unga Bunga playstyle, so his rotation will also work for characters like Kakarot and Jian. This rotation presents a unique opportunity to generate Concerto energy very quickly, not just for Baizhi, but for characters like Zheng Xin, by just focusing on her third and fourth basic attack after the swap, since Zheng Xin's main source of regenerating Concerto energy is stuck in her forte, which takes so much time to fully charge at S0. Baizhi's weapon options directly influence her Concerto energy regeneration, so here's a Mortefi and Baizhi swap rotation using the Rectifier of the Voyager and the variation. After completing the rotations that I mentioned earlier with the Rectifier of the Voyager, I was still lacking about 5 Concerto energy, so doing 2 basic attacks filled it up to 100. Doing the same rotation with an R2 variation fully filled her Concerto energy. Both of these tests proves that you don't need a high refinement variation if you're using this special rotation due to the small amount of about 5 Concerto energy that I was lacking during the Rectifier of the Voyager test. So an R1 variation will do just fine. The only time that this continuous swap specialized rotation loses its value is if you have a high refinement variation like an R5 variation or a high refinement of Shorekeeper's signature, and you're playing in a team that has a sub DPS who possess a high Concerto efficiency like Sanhua. If that's the case, then you're better off using the 4 basic attacks and then consume the stacks with your skill, and if your Concerto energy is still not full, you can do 2 or 3 basic attacks and then consume the stacks with your heavy attack to fully fill your Concerto energy. However, if those things does not apply to you, then you're better off using these specialized rotations. Judging by how she needs her liberation to quickly fill up her Concerto energy, you should use one energy regen 3-cost echo since her best in slot weapons all have energy regen substats on them to help get her liberation every rotation. You can then run an additional HP 3-cost main stat to help her with her healing. For her 4-cost echo, I prefer to run the Fallacy of No Return, not just for the attack buff, which helps if you're not able to pick up the orb after her skill activation, but for the 10% energy regen as well, since we've clearly established that Baizhi needs energy regen to be able to use her liberation every rotation, which helps with her Concerto energy regeneration. The 1-cost echoes should be HP main stats, which helps with her healing. Now let's move on to the last section of this video, where I'll break down my rotations with popular teams that you can run in the Tower of Adversity, but keep in mind that Baizhi can be used in any team that you can think of. Let's start with a Zhang Liao team. I'll be using Zheng Xin for the Liberation Outro buff. You first start with Baizhi's Liberation and then swap to Zheng Xin to complete her basic attack sequence, which should start from the second stage, and then use her Resonance Liberation and skill. Then swap to Baizhi, do 2 basic attacks, and then swap to Zheng Xin to complete her basic attack sequence once again, and then swap to Baizhi. Do 2 basic attacks and use her skill to fully fill her Concerto energy, use her Echo skill, and then intro with Zhang Liao. For this part, you don't have to wait for Baizhi's outro skill to heal your main DPS. You just need to swap off to your sub DPS as fast as possible after using his Echo skill and Resonance skill. After swapping to your sub DPS, in this case Zheng Xin, Baizhi's outro skill will heal Zheng Xin, which resets the 3 seconds timer. However, because of the continuous swapping between Baizhi and Zheng Xin will just need to use her skill to fully fill her Concerto energy. Then intro with Zhang Liao, which makes it very easy for Baizhi's outro skill to heal him and obtain the 15% damage amplification. After Zhang Liao's damage window ends, intro with Baizhi and then start the whole rotation once again. For the Jinshi team, I'll be using Zheji as the sub DPS for the Resonance skill buff. You first need to use Baizhi's Liberation and then swap to Zheji to use her Liberation as well. Swap to Jinshi and then do 3 basic attacks to get the Dragon Blast skill, and then swap to Baizhi to cast her intro to recover some Concerto energy. Do 2 basic attacks and then swap to Zheji to complete her full basic attack sequence, which should start from the second stage, helping her recover half of her Forte bar. Swap back to Baizhi and then fill her Forte by doing 2 basic attacks again, and then use her skill to fill her Concerto energy. Use her Echo skill and then swap to Zheji, who will now have a full Forte bar. Cast her skill and then follow up with a basic attack. Teleport 3 times by pressing her skill and then swap to Jinshi. Use Jinshi's Resonance skill and Echo skill. Do 3 basic attacks and then use another Dragon Blast, then repeat the whole process once again. The time it takes for Jinshi to complete her basic attacks to cast her Dragon Blast skill is more than enough for Baizhi's outro skill to heal Jinshi for her to obtain the 15% damage amplification. If I couldn't test out your favorite team, leave it in the comments and I'll do my best to help you out. You can also join the community Discord, where you'll find players who are willing to help you if you're having any issues with the game. So, while Baizhi may not have a much comfy playstyle like Rina or Shorekeeper, her buffing capabilities are not that far behind. So if she's just collecting dust in your inventory, I hope this video gives you a reason to finally put a little bit of resources into her, because she doesn't need to be fully maxed out to utilize her full buffing capabilities. Catch you guys in the next one. Bye bye.
So please whatever.